Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today we are talking about Obsidian and the options we have to edit it remotely and on mobile. Since discovering Obsidian, my entire life, to be dramatic, has been changed, at least in respects of knowledge work and information retention, the connection of notes, and not just taking notes, but making notes. And what's been mind-blowing is the actual applications of this towards my work, which I am a knowledge worker. I'm a research analyst, and actually now I'm a research specialist. So this has direct applications on my work, on my personal interests, my personal life, business. It's been a drastic change from doing things in OneNote, Joplin, Evernote, or whatever application you might want to put there. It's been absolutely game-changing doing things in Obsidian. And something that I constantly have to remind myself is that it's new, it's beta, it's already this good, and it's not even like to 1.0 yet. There's so much more to come from this application and the developers, and a lot of new features. The ability to just edit things on mobile and iOS it's not there yet. But doesn't mean it's not going to be coming. Remember when we were all pining for block level references, and all the people who were Rome expats were all just clamoring for block references? We got that now, and now we've gone so many miles ahead of that. Now, one pain point for Obsidian right now is that there's no mobile option, there's no iPad option, and there's really no iOS app or way to access things on mobile through the conventional means, downloading the app. We have it on Linux, Mac, and Windows, because you have Flatpak for Linux, you got a DMG, the disk image for Mac, and you got the straight up executable for Windows. So we can install it on every platform because it's Electron. But there's no option for iOS or iPad. So how do we edit things mobily or remotely? And how do we do things like, it was one thing that is commonly asked for is, how are we going to do quick capture if you're on the go and you want to remember about it to get a note? Well, there's not really any option right now. It would be really convenient to just open up an app with, on your phone for Obsidian and just have a quick option to just, hey, grab this note idea. I'm going to get to it later, but quick capture that note idea. For now, I've just been defaulting to using Todoist because I can just use the Apple voice assistant. I can't say her name, otherwise she'll ruin my audio settings right now. But you can just say, hey, remind me about this idea at whatever in Todoist, or just remind me. In that case, it'll use Apple reminders if you're on Apple. But in any case, you can use like an application like that to audio quick capture your ideas. And sometimes I'll be driving and I'll just say, hey, remind me about this thing at 7 p.m. in Todoist, and it will leave me a reminder to get back to that when I'm, home at my computer. But what if you also wanted to edit your vault and you're not even at home or at your computer? Let's just say you're at work, you want to quickly pop onto your vault and make some small changes or add a note, or let's just say your work actually has some space in your vault and you do some work things in your vault. You want to edit it remotely from your home machine, where it's actually installed on, where your vault actually lives. How do we do that? So there's no mobile app, but if you use my Git workflow that I will put a card up there for you, and follow that to a T, it might have some issues on macOS and dealing with cron, but I also have a Medium article for that Git workflow that also has a link to that resource about how to actually make sure cron does work as it should to do the recurring scheduling. I'll put a link to all of these referenced things and URLs in the pinned comment below with the timestamps. But if you follow the workflow, read the article, follow those steps, it is a little bit technical, but it's because it's a workaround. It's not necessarily something that's like, this is the best way to do it. This is a workaround, but it's an effective one. So using the Git workflow, you can sync your vault to GitHub. Now you can also have it as a private repository. So you can keep your stuff private, which is exactly what I do because I got my journal in there. I'm not going to like make that public. So with that, you can edit and sync your files on GitHub. So once you do that, what are the options available to you? How are you going to edit things? Are you just going to like manually, painfully each little item in GitHub and change a file and make a pull request for it and just How are you going to do that? Are you just going to pull the whole vault down to another machine and edit it that way? Yeah, you could do that too. But there are some options. Let's just say you work on a firewalled machine. You can't install software. You can't install Obsidian on that machine. You might break a contract or break some rules, so we can't do that. So what are some options available so that you can remotely edit your vault with some level of effectiveness of the features we have in Obsidian, but without Obsidian? Interesting? Stay tuned. So let's say you are at work. You are on a lockdown machine. You have an IT department. You can't just be downloading software. Now, technically on Windows, you can download Obsidian without admin rights onto a machine. But if you're a rule respecting and IT process respecting person and don't want to do that, then you're going to need some other option to edit your vault remotely. Plus, your vault's on your home computer. So how do we even get it so that you can edit remotely? Well, we do have some options, and there are things like Obsidian Publish, but this doesn't let you edit. This just shows you like the preview of your vault, the presentation, the public presentation, public facing notes that you have out here. Not necessarily something that you're going to be editing in. This is just like, hey, here's the nice shiny face. But to actually get in the weeds and start editing things, you're going to need to do something different. I mentioned my GitHub workflow video, and the link will be up there. And what it looks like is now I have this GitHub repo, and this is the repo for my personal vault. Every single note that I have, for the most part, is in here. Actually, yeah, every note is in here. And this does contain my journal, so obviously I am keeping this repo private. This is why you're never going to see it, because it contains certain private notes and things that I don't even obviously don't put on publish. So my publish is publicly accessible, but this is private, and with this vault or this repo, I actually have some options at my fingertips now. So by using this simple script that you can get access to if you look at the video and my Medium article about it, with this simple script tossed into cron, so a recurring scheduled job basically runs this every hour for me, I get my GitHub repo that is consistently updated every hour with every single minute change to every file in my entire vault. With this means that now this vault can become a live copy of my vault and all of my settings. So the .obsidian directory contains a lot of the files that run and contain all the information about how your vault and Obsidian app is set up. You have all the different configurations, key mappings, what you have starred, your templates, workspaces, all these different things. Basically, I back up all of these things except the .cache directory, and I think one other thing, but like mostly the .cache is what you want to avoid because that's just a bunch of junk you don't need and can cause some issues. But with all the rest of this stuff synced, what this means is if I have Obsidian installed on another computer and I pull this repo down to that computer and then open that vault in Obsidian, I'm basically going to be looking at exactly the same thing that I left when I left my house, hypothetically. So with this workflow, you can easily just open up Obsidian, pull this repo down, and now have access exactly to where you left off. Workspace, the open note, everything on another machine. Some issue with this third-party plugins, the community plugins, you're going to have to turn those on because a new application, it's going to default to off. So once you turn all those on, you're looking at the exact same thing. Now, where this gets really powerful is if you can't install Obsidian, can't take advantage of all those native features, well, what can you do with this? Well, it's on GitHub, so that means you can use some really interesting tools with Codespaces. What are Codespaces, you might be asking? It's basically a cloud-hosted virtual machine running VS Code. Basically, you're running VS Code, but in the cloud, and it's looking at your vault as the files that it's looking at. So in that way, you don't have to download anything onto your computer because it's in the cloud. So if I went to right here, download the code, I'm not downloading the code. I'm opening with Codespaces. Now, I already made one because it does take a little bit to set up and load. And when you do this, what you're going to have to do is in your git.gitignore file, you're going to need one. You'll have to put in a snippet to actually ignore Python because this will actually download a bunch of Python stuff in here, .venv. So you're going to actually have to ignore this and a bunch of like included Python files. I forget if they're in here or not. but right here, you can see like, 1,000+ changes. These are all Python things in .venv, or the virtual environment. That's for Codespaces. So as long as you add that to your .gitignore, so you can ignore those changes, you're going to be all set. So I pulled up my .gitignore just to show you a live example. There was also another one, Python env 3.8. I'm not sure if that's an old thing, but we also want to ignore .venv. So I'm going to put .venv in the .gitignore file, save it, and now you can see that it's ignored everything. So now we only have one change. It's grayed out. The one change is just the change to the .gitignore file. Beautiful. Awesome. So what happens if you make some changes in here and save it? Well, you need to, just like in Git, push those changes to the repo. So add, commit, push, you're done. Now those changes are in the repo. So I made the change to the .gitignore. So in the terminal here, I could say git status, and then, yes, the .gitignore file has been changed. So git add .gitignore. So git status. It's been modified. It's staged. We need to commit it now. So git commit -m. So the message is ignore Python stuff. Okay. Done. So if we did git status again, there's nothing. We're just ready to push. So git push. And it's done. Well, it will be done. So it loads that, and now those changes are present. If I go back to my vault and I refresh the page, and I go to my .gitignore file, here we go. Hey, ignore Python stuff, and we can see that, hey, .venv is now in the repository. And so, because I edited this file on the web, on the cloud, when my script syncs my local machine, so Obsidian, on my laptop, my vault, with this repo, it's going to pull those changes down to my repository, my vault, and say, hey, this was changed up there, so now you're going to have those changes on your machine now. And so in this way, if you leave to go to work, you're not working collaboratively with anybody, so nobody's going to step on anybody's toes with this. So you can easily just, hey, I'm leaving my computer, push my changes to GitHub, now I go to work or wherever, all of my latest changes are on GitHub. I can edit that vault in Codespaces, then when you're done, and you're ready to go home, push all your changes to Codespaces, or push all your changes to GitHub, then you go home, you pull those changes down, and you're right back where you left off, even down to the open note, because you got the workspace and all of the .directory data files in here. So all of that comes from just using and following my workflow that I made in that video and the Medium article. So now we're on Codespaces. We got VS Code, we got our files and other stuff in here. By itself, it's basically just plain text files. Not really good for much of anything by itself. Okay, so what are we doing with all of this? How do we do anything with all of this? Here's the problem. You're going to need to install a bunch of extensions. Now, if you're going to install a bunch of extensions, there are some other things that might be better for us. Now, if you're just going to quickly edit something, get something out, and you don't really care too much, you're not going to be doing a lot of intense work, and you just want to quickly put something somewhere, this is a great way by itself, nothing else, just, hey, drop some stuff in there, push it to GitHub, or even just manually edit the file on GitHub. But because we have VS Code and it's using our vault, that means we have access to two very awesome applications. Depends on how you define them. It's a lot of extensions and how they work synergistically together. These two options are Foam and Dendron. You may have heard of them. Foam is actually where the Obsidian developers got, I believe this is where they got the idea for the block level reference hashes and the syntax for them. There's a great YouTube video from the Foam developers talking about that. But now, if we open up Foam and we look at the Foam website, it's a great tool inspired by Rome Research, and all it uses is VS Code and a collection of extensions on VS Code to, let's looking at this picture, we get documents, backlinks, tag explorers, wiki link syntax, a graph view, a preview view. And then basically, because it's in VS Code, even though these are just what you get with the Foam extensions, which is like 4 or 5 different extensions, you can put any extension you want into VS Code. So all the swath of programming available extensions and things that make programming easier by manipulating and using text, you can use those things. Snippet files with tab stops, a to-do tree so you can see every single instance of the to-do word or fix me or anything like that to follow up on items. Anything like that, and even Git lens for Git history in VS Code. All of these things are available because it's in VS Code. So, looking at Foam, how do we get this? How do we do this? Well, one thing you can do is if you're starting, you don't even have a vault yet, you could just make a vault by using the foam template. Now, if you're going to migrate into foam with an existing vault, you might have a little bit more of a growing pain. I personally don't use either of these tools much yet. Maybe I might use them one day, but I don't really use them at all. These are just ideas so that if you want to do some things like this, you can take advantage of them. And foam has some great stuff to offer, and we'll get to that in a little bit. There's a lot of great documentation on here. There's a template repo you can download. Maybe you can go through those files, figure out which ones you don't need, and then import your vault to that, and then push it all to GitHub, and you're good to go. And because it's on GitHub, that means you can also use GitHub Pages to publish your vault. So if you didn't want to pay for Obsidian Publish for whatever reason, and you want to use something a little bit more of your own control and completely plain text, all of your own stuff, hosted the way you want it, everything your stuff, then you could do that. Take advantage of all the resources that GitHub has to offer. So that's like the foam homepage. Now foam, here's the template repo. There's not a lot of files. There's a couple different things here to do, inbox, readme, some attachments, documents, and then some meta stuff for like styling and whatever. But forking this will get you a use template. It'll get you a template repo using foam. And so with this, you can easily take advantage of what foam has to offer, some basic documentation, and get started. Foam also has a lot of amazing features, and there's a recipes page in here for their documentation of all the different things you can do with foam. Some of them are not fleshed out yet, but one really cool one that stuck out to me is a lot of people talk about this, and it's nowhere near being done, if it's even being worked on yet in Obsidian, is live collaboration. So because you're using VS Code, and VS Code has a live share option, and it's basically meant for programming. So if you do any sort of software work, you know how intensive and how many tools there are around programming and the sphere of text manipulation for code and doing that stuff collaboratively. So using those tools and extensions, you can do that in VS Code on your vault. So if you have a shared vault for your workplace, a team, you can do live sharing and do version control on your documentation and take advantage of everything else in all these extensions. Lots of great features in here. There's also a graph and custom styling through JSON of that graph. So you want to change all the colors, manipulate it, have granular control of your graph styling, you can do that. And again, tab stop code snippets. So each of your templates can be completely done through VS Code snippets, and those snippets can actually have tab stops. So you can tab through every single piece of information you want to fill in without having to move your mouse or do any sort of weird stuff, combined with maybe Vim emulation mode. Oh, you're off to the races there, because you got tab stops and you got Vim text movements. So there's a lot you can do. You got backlinking, you got unlinked reference panes, you have GitHub pages for the actual hosting. Like the sky's the limit when you get to GitHub, GitHub repos, Codespaces, and the tools available in VS Code and on GitHub. So following the Git workflow opens up a whole new world of possibilities for you if you want to open that door. Now, on the other hand, there is Dendron. Now, I tried to get Dendron working once, and I honestly just found it a little bit more complicated than foam was. And that's just me being lazy because I already have something that works for me. My workflow, I don't really do any mobile editing. I can't focus enough to do deep work on my vault when I'm not at home. If I'm at work, I'm working, so I'm not doing work on my vault usually. I might, do my daily journal in like GitHub or a Codespace to just like write down some thoughts as I go through the day, but I'm not like editing and doing a lot of deep work in my vault. So I don't really use these tools. These are for like if these might be applicable for you or useful to you. Personally, I found foam a lot easier to get off the ground than Dendron, and it made a lot more sense to me than Dendron. But that's not to knock Dendron. I haven't tried it or gone through it enough to really have a robust opinion and knowledge of it. But I do know of it. It's on my radar, and it is another application that looks through all of your vault. Now I say application, but it really is a collection of extensions, including a Dendron extension for VS Code, that has a variety of features, and they recommend a bunch of these different extensions for markdown notes, shortcuts, previews, image handling when you paste images, tags, backlinks, graphs, and then some other things they recommend like bookmarks, Vim, and GitLens, and just a lot of other features. Again, it really is which of these might be better for you. They're both pretty awesome, and for what you can do with them, it's really just a matter of what are you trying to do and what would help you get to, a completed state. There's a bunch of examples of workflows, and there's actually a lot of documentation on Dendron. There's cheat sheets, there's a Discord server, there's an onboarding video, there's several different things in here if you wanted to dive into this more. I'm not going to show you things because I honestly haven't dived into this too deeply. If there's a demand, I might do it, but honestly, this is just to bring awareness to that there are options to edit remotely and mobilely until those options are directly supported by Obsidian and by its developers. So for now, this is all just workaround stuff for dealing with your Obsidian vault. So if you are interested in these things, these exist. Here you go. If you actually really want me to go into detail on them, I can look into that, but I honestly don't use these. These are just some suggestions. And finally, the last tool I'm going to bring up and suggest is actually Logseq. Now, Logseq is a really interesting tool because it's inspired by Roam research. So it has the daily note. It looks exactly, well, not exactly, but it looks a lot like Roam research. There's a lot of features that are very similar. Now, Logseq can actually look at an entire repo, but what it also can do is it can look at a particular branch. So this is really useful. So for me, with my Git workflow, I just made a copy branch specifically for Logseq because I didn't want it to like accidentally nuke my vault. So I actually made a branch for it to look at, and now this is like, my C++ note for my vault. And, we got graph view, there's recent files, and help documentation, content, there's daily notes. I honestly don't use this too much, but if I was going to use something, this is a good thing that just is simple enough, gets out of your way, and there's no extensions. It's just, it runs off of the GitHub repo directly, not even a code space. Not a VS Code extension, just right there. So I have a branch called Logseq, and that's what it looks at. And that's it. You can make notes, you can do daily notes, and yeah, there's more documentation. This is actively developed. There's a lot of things that these developers are currently doing, and I have used Logseq more than I've used Foam or Dendron, but again, I'm not really using any of these tools because I'm kind of happy with keeping it simple and doing what I'm doing. But again, options exist for mobile and remote editing if that is something that is of critical importance to you. One thing you will have to be aware of using all three of these tools, Logseq included, is that these three things will add files, metadata, and just other different files and things to your vault for them to run. So if you use Logseq, you're going to have a bunch of extra files and different things added into your vault by the application, tool, whatever, that helps it run and do whatever it's going to do. So if you are suddenly bombarded with a bunch of new files, you're going to be like, where did all these come from? It's because of what tool you're using, and it's going to put its own files into your repository. So just be aware of that if you use any of these tools. So hopefully you found this video at least interesting or informative of just some options that you have as a workaround until mobile and iOS or iPadOS development actually occurs on Obsidian to make Obsidian a completely accessible application on all platforms. Until then, there are some pretty robust and awesome options out there that you can take advantage of and play around with. If you really want me to make an in-depth review on some of these tools, you can let me know that in the comments, or let me know like what you've done with these tools. Have you used them, and what do you use them for? What does it look like? Do you have a publicly accessible vault we can look at? Like, let me know your thoughts, your opinions, and what you've done with these applications. So, a quick note before we go, a big thank you to all of the patrons and sponsors who support this channel. Rito, Leonardo, Justin, Ed, Brandon, Klaus, Pippa, Alberto, Clark, Joel, John, Paul, and Jimmy. Thank you all for all of your support and assistance through all of the time of this YouTube channel. Donating and supporting this channel is not required by any means, but everyone who does is highly appreciated. The best ways to support the channel on an ongoing basis is GitHub sponsors, followed by Patreon. GitHub sponsors doesn't charge any fees, so I get the full amount you send to me. And if you want to just do like a one-time thing as a thank you or whatever, buy me a coffee or PayPal works just fine. Again, not required, but a big thank you if you do that. And with that, I will catch you all in the next one.